Hi, this is the manager's desk. My name's Evan Baltz, and I'm a marketing technology leader and a team builder. Recently had a request from one of the Spotify followers to the podcast about how to deliver challenging information to employees, let's say, folks who maybe are having performance issues. How do we approach them? How do we handle that? Um, and we touched on it a little bit earlier in a podcast a couple of times. One about being authentic. I think being straightforward and authentic with an individual who is underperforming or has some issues getting along with teammates or whatever it might be. I think it's important to approach them in a very human, authentic way. And I think one of the key principles there is connecting with them on that human being level rather than approaching it from the I'm the boss and I'm here to tell you that you're not any good. And you may say, well, I use all sorts of fancy words to disguise that that's my real feelings, right? The problem is that employees can see through that. Other people can see through that approach, even though the specifics of your words, I'll call it HR speak, may convey one message. The tone and the situation and the context will show kind of a completely different side. So it's very important that you get that tone right. And the way to start that conversation is to ask some questions and allow the employee to maybe talk to you about some of the difficulties they may be experiencing with a person on the team, with somebody within the department, or personal issues at home. And most often, that's going to be the case. Somebody is in the midst of some personal trials or conflict or insecurity, whatever it might be in their personal life, it carries over to their work life. This may include, other family members. It may include, like I mentioned, it may be somebody on the team that they're friends with on the side, and that's causing frustration because of how that relationship is going. It could be an illness, it could be any number of things, but it's important to not ignore that to get to the heart of the issue. So asking questions like, tell me, how are you doing? Are you having any difficulties or experiencing anything that is frustrating you right now? Talk about those things. If there's nothing, that's fine. You can move past it. But if there is something, spend some time just talking about that. Ask them how they feel like it impacts them on a daily basis. Do you feel like that impacts you on a daily basis? You might be surprised what they say. The goal isn't to sort of dig into somebody's private life or to make them feel vulnerable. The goal is to empower them to share what might be the actual causes of those issues. And sometimes people will tell you that there is an issue, but won't say specifically what it is. And that's fine. That just helping you understand where they're coming from. As an illustration, I remember a coworker at a place that I worked. It seemed like he was a little bit not himself during the day. Had a couple meetings with him in a larger group. He was very quiet and a little bit, just not his normal self. I felt body language, lack of tossing in a joke here and there. It was just something that was different that I hadn't seen from him. Happened to be hanging around at the end of the day, saw him in the hallway and just said, "Hey, is everything okay?" And he said, "No." Um, then I said, "Oh, I kind of sensed that, things weren't, something was off. I kind of felt like that." And he said, "Yeah, it's just personal stuff at home, but I really appreciate you asking." Didn't want to dig anymore, but just letting a person like that know that you understand and that you're a human being and that, you weren't upset at them for, being a normal person. Another experience that I had was someone came to me and was very frustrated about a managerial change that they had recently experienced that they believed wasn't going to be good for them, felt like a demotion, felt like something wasn't right. And when a coworker is expressing that kind of emotion, that it might be affecting their life and their family and everything because of something is going on at work, this person broke down. And the first thing, eh, I find it interesting when people apologize when they cry or have a tear or whatever. There's no need for that. That's a human emotion. All right. There's no weakness in shedding a tear when something is emotionally getting to you, and just reassuring a person, please don't apologize for being human, right? There's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with expressing your emotion, and just having someone listen to you can be very powerful. That all to say that understanding those issues is really the heart of how you handle somebody when there's a performance issue within the workplace. Talking to them about what might be external factors that might be frustrating them without necessarily getting into all the specifics, but allow the person to at least express that. I think the second thing is making sure that your employee knows that you're on their side, that you are here to ensure that their performance improves, and are willing to help and devise a plan to make sure that that is what happens. That doesn't mean not holding them accountable. It certainly does, but it means taking that personal approach and saying, look, I'm going to help you through this. Whatever it is, we're going to devise a plan just between you and me, and we're going to work on that. And as I shared in a previous illustration, sharing that you're confident in that person's ability to overcome whatever the performance issue is. They have to feel as if you are, and not pretend invested, but they have to feel that you mean it, that you are invested in their success, that you're going to, as a manager, you're going to put yourself out there to help them, to maybe change the narrative within the department about this employee. That's saying I'm in this for the long game. And even telling them, look, 9 months from now, we will move past this. People won't think about it anymore. We'll turn the page. You'll turn the page, and everything is going to turn out well. Sharing with the employee that you're investing that in them. You might say, but hey, Evan, what if the person isn't interested in any of that and just sort of doubles down on the negative behavior, or tries some type of a counterattack by bad mouthing you? Those are things that happen as well. And that's when you need to get others involved. And it's important that when you talk to that person about the difficult issues, that you continue to say you want their success, but there has to be an attitude change. There has to be not just the performance, but their spirit and attitude towards their work or coworkers or whatever the issue is needs to change. And without saying it in a threatening way, it's like we will continue to work on that until it's corrected. Um, I think keeping that sort of positive tone, knowing that, it's just not going to go on indefinitely. We have to do something about it. And then after that, if there isn't improvement or the attitude hasn't adjusted, that's a tricky one. Sometimes their attitude will change, but they still haven't learned how to change behaviors that may be impacting others negatively. That might mean not getting projects done, or sticking to a schedule, whatever it might be. Having that conversation, talking to them about, look, I appreciate the efforts that are being made in your attitude, but let's put in place some guardrails for you so that you'll know when you have successfully sort of passed the test and moved on behind the performance issues. I think trying to stay away from the ultimate steps of a performance plan through HR. What I've seen in the past is, in a lot of organizations, that's just the organization getting their ducks in a row to let you go. In fact, sometimes that happens faster than others. And you want to let the employee know that that's not the direction that you really want to go. You want to address this between you and them and help them improve. It's not like, hey, I'm setting down the law, and if you don't live up to the standard, too bad, so sad. That's not the correct approach, right? You want to help them succeed. And ultimately, turning that person into a high performing employee is what will make others appreciate your leadership and give you more leadership opportunities as they see that you handle difficult situations correctly and humanely and whatnot. You may get pressure sometimes from those above you to just cut somebody loose. And that has to be a judgment call, but I would really caution against that. It sends the wrong message to others that someone can just pull a lever and we're done with that person. There are people who need to be let go from time to time for various long-standing, you know, performance, personality issues in the workplace. But I think in most cases, employees want to improve, and sometimes they just don't know how. It's that way with kids sometimes. I have a high schooler. Sometimes you tell them, here's what the expectations are, but they've never had any practice actually doing that. And sometimes it requires them making a mistake and then showing them and talking with them, here's a better way. So a lot of times when you start to have a more difficult discussion, say, hey, how about your relationship with Rob? It seems to be a little bit fractured at the moment. What do you think is causing that? Let them talk about that. They'll probably talk about they said this and they do that. And I think that's fine to let them know that and say, yes, I can understand that would be frustrating if somebody did that. Do you think that your behavior, attitudes, responses, emails, whatever it is, contributes in any way to them feeling like they have to lash out there? Here's the key of something not to do. And I've experienced it personally. I've seen others on my teams experience it is you cannot turn the tables and start to victim blame or victim shame. In other words, well, this person spoke harshly to you in a meeting. What did you do to provoke them? Right? Like you just shifted it. You gave no responsibility to the person who might have spoken unprofessionally in a meeting and put the blame on the person who was on the receiving end of that. Whether there was blame to share around, that's not where you need to approach it. It is if something occurred, if there's a relationship break, if something difficult is going on, let me help you resolve that. So, what are some steps that you could take to perhaps address the issue that they're raising, if any, and perhaps adjust how that person perceives you? Um, what are the types of things that are negatively impacting those that you're working with that you in the past have thought, well, I'm just being myself, right? I'm just going to be me. And there's you want to be authentic and you want to be genuine, and it doesn't give you carte blanche to be a jerk, right? Like let's just say it the way it is. It's like it doesn't mean that you're allowed to be a jerk. And you have to talk the person through, here's the steps that we're going to take. And express that you believe that they can manage the situation, they can improve. If it's a relationship, if it's performance based, it's like, hey, here's a good tip. When you're working on something, block off 4 hours in a block so that you can complete the task on time, and make sure that you actually give them the time to do that. But set clear expectations. Here's the 3 to 5 things that we're going to talk about each week. And I want to see improvement. I want to have you reflect back to me how you feel you've improved on those things. That way, they're holding themselves accountable. You're doing it by helping, but ultimately, you want them to hold themselves accountable. You want them to see that you have their best interest in mind, right? Like, I want you to perform well, be good at your job, and be content in your job. I don't want you to be frustrated or in a negative mood all the time, what are some things that you can do to help the atmosphere about that? I think all of the time it is remembering for you to stay authentic, to be truthful with them if they've hurt somebody else's feelings. It's important to actually talk about the specifics of that. Don't get too into the weeds on the details, though, because I think that distracts from what's the underlying cause of either the performance issues or the relationship issues. Um, Others may sense like, hey, is there some problem with this other person on my team? And it's important not to share the details, but you can share that it's like, I'm helping them work on some, uh, issues or something to that effect to let them know, one, that you care about somebody and you're not just going to cut them loose. Now, sometimes you'll have an employee or another person from within your department or organization come to you and say, "Man, your employee Bill is terrible. You should fire him. I don't like him. He did this, he did that." Your position there, if it's someone outside your team, is to listen to what they have to say and not negate it instantly, but say, let me look into that a little bit more. Let me talk to them about their perception of it. And then don't come at them with, hey, Bill said this about you. It's more important to say, do you feel there might be anyone who doesn't trust you? What might be behind that? What are some things that we can work on together to help build that trust without ever mentioning that person's name? And one final thing is sometimes the person's immediate response, if there's been a complaint from someone on their team or someone within your organization, sometimes the first response is, who said that? Have you ever experienced that? Well, who said that? There's an attempt there to, one, perhaps intimidate that person into not saying those things again by once you find, oh, it was Jane who said that. Oh, then that person may be weaponized to go talk to Jane and say, why are you bad mouthing me? That's not the type of environment you want to create. So it doesn't really matter who said it. Someone feels that way. And let's address whether that is correct or not. Sometimes that person's out of line and say, I don't see that in you, and no one else has ever said that. I think that's a problem with that other person and not with you. But here are some things that we can work on together to maybe alleviate that. Maybe we talk to that person about specifically about what the issues are, whatever that might be. But I think it's important to hold the confidentiality and not have them turn the focus onto someone who has voiced an opinion or a frustration. That's an easy distraction thing. The employee may dismiss that feedback because they don't like that person. Well, I'm not going to take what they said. I don't like them. They're just out to get me. That type of an attitude. It's like it may be touching on something that has some grains of truth into it. Let's examine that. Let's see if we can figure out what that is and resolve it. But the bottom line here is having authentic human conversations in a very compassionate and calm and address the things that they say, perhaps, guide them in a way of thinking about it, to not take it as, someone backstabbing them. Talk about what nuggets of truth there might be here, and direct them. It's important to keep them on track for performance issues on a weekly basis. How do you feel that you have done over the last week? Give me some illustrations of how you approached a situation differently than we had talked about in the past. Ask for those specifics, but allow the person to hold themselves accountable. What's kind of a score would you give yourself on these 3 bullet points that we discussed last week? On a scale of 1 to 5, how would you score yourself to see if they're tracking and understand what the root cause is? And ultimately, at the end of the day, you want the employee restored and feeling good about where they're at, that you were helpful, that you didn't turn your back on them, that you were actually invested in their performance, it goes miles to the future of that particular employee, whether it's within your organization or somewhere else, that they had someone help them through a difficult situation. That person is you. That helps you as a manager because other people want to work for you. They see that you're fair, that you weren't out to get them, that you helped restore them or build confidence in them in situations where they have broken. But let them also know that it's a long-term approach. You can't just go through, hey, 2 weeks, hey, it's all better. I've had that experience too, where I think I'm done. I did these three things and everything's good. Nope, it's every day, every interaction, all the time, 365, right? It has to be consistent because the minute that your employee is not consistent in that improved behavior, everyone will believe they've just fallen back into their old pattern. And that happens a lot. We stop holding people accountable after 2 weeks or a month or 3 months or whatever. And those behaviors come back. And the goal is to say, we don't want to see those behaviors ever come back. We want a completely changed person. It kind of is like going on a diet, right? You can lose a few pounds in the first couple of weeks just by not eating. There, see, I addressed it. I lost 10 pounds. Everything's good, right? What do we know happens? You just fall back into your old patterns and put the weight right back on. Being accountable every day for the long term, letting your employee know, I'm in this for the long term with you. I'm here to support you, guide you, make yourself available for discussions, talk about how they perceived things. I've had sat in a meeting, listened to somebody, and can you believe she said that in the meeting? And it's like, you're hearing something that's not there, right? I didn't hear that at all. You are perceiving things based on past experiences, which is normal, but try to see past that. Help them equip themselves with tools for how to get past those types of things. And at the end of the day, you won't be successful in every case. You just won't. There will be ones who just refuse any kind of assistance or direction. And when you reach that spot, then you know what to do. But I think in probably 90-95% of the cases, taking these steps in getting to the root cause and being compassionate and understanding the person's behavior and how they interact with others and how they perform on the job, this will help you restore them and keep them as a high performing employee. Do you have any comments? Leave them in the comments section. Would be happy to interact with you about that. And like I said, this came from a question from somebody from the podcast, and I thought it was worthy of addressing it a little bit more in depth for you. All these podcasts are available on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. Please check me out on LinkedIn as well. Until next time, we'll see you.